As we get into Unit 4A, the equation of lines, I wanted to start with a review of some equations and have you look at the bell work on page 9. Pause the video and return when you've completed the bell work. So here's what I end up with. I solved this equation for y. Recall that that's what we have to do if we want to graph equations is solve them for y. The slope, which is frequently called m, is 2. The coordinates of the y-intercept might be easier for you. That's 0, -6. That's the number right here. Y equals mx plus b. That's b. And I see that the coordinates for the y-intercept involve an x of 0, which would lead me to believe that if the x-intercept is listed, the y-coordinate there would be 0. So what I did is, one way to solve this is I put a 0 in there for y and saw that 2x equaled 6, which means that x equals 3. Another way to do it is to graph this equation. So there's the slope, -6. I went down 6. The slope is 2. That's up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Drew my line. And I noticed that the x-intercept is this point right here at 3, 0. The objective of this topic is to write equations of lines with given information, and this will start us off with a brief review from algebra of the types of slope. First of all, if we've got a negative slope, it goes downhill like this, and a positive slope goes uphill when I'm looking from left to right. A vertical line like this one has an undefined slope, and a horizontal line has a slope of 0. So VUX, vertical, undefined, and the x tells me the equation of this line, for example, is x equals -2. The HOI is for horizontal line. I don't really like the word no here. I'm going to say the slope is 0. Because sometimes no slope could refer to undefined. So slope is 0, and make that correction. Slope is 0, and the equation here is going to be y equals, in this case it's y equals 2 to get this line across here like that. So this can maybe be a good reference sheet to you to the types of slope. The x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. It's where they intercept one another. The equation in slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where the m stands for the slope and the b is the y-intercept, or the y value of that intercept right here. So this would be 0, b, whatever that is. So let's look at this first equation, and we'll do it similarly to how we did some of these a couple of topics ago. I'm going to make a little table with these numbers. This is 1, -2, and 10. Now the easiest way for us to solve these is going to be to use our calculator, so grab that now. I'm using a TI 83 Plus here, but it'll work the same on your other calculators as well. Turn it on and press this set of keystrokes. First press Stat, and then the edit's lit up there, so hit Enter. This is Stat Edit, and I'm going to enter these coordinates into my L1 and L2. If you have other stuff there, you can use your arrow keys to clear out list 1. I don't want to delete list 1, I just want to clear it out. The numbers here are 1 and 3. Go over to this L2 and enter the y's, -2 and 10. So I'm going to write on here, enter data here. Now I'm going to press the Stat button again, and this time instead of enter here, I'm going to go over to Calc. So Stat Calc, and I go to number 4, which you can either scroll down to get to number 4, or you can simply press 4. This is called linreg. Hit enter, and it will calculate the line for you. So in this case, there's the A. The A is in front of the X there. The B is what's over here. And so my equation is y equals 6x minus 8. Now this next problem is really kind of similar to the first one, except it's just displayed differently. So a y-intercept of -3 is going to be 0, -3, and an x-intercept of 9 is 9, 0. So again, I make my table as I did before. These tables are really helpful to keep you from transposing any of your numbers and getting them in the wrong place in the calculator, which would, of course, cause the formulas to be off and give you the wrong answer. And I'm going to use the same steps that I did up here. So stat, hit enter on edit, enter this data. I can just type over it if I want, 0 and 9, or I could clear it out first, -3 and 0. Notice I'm entering this table exactly like that here. Now, stat calc, and it's number 4. Hit enter, and I get this equation. I can see this, and I've got a good idea. This is a fraction. So it's y equals 1/3 x minus 3. There's the minus 3 right here. If you wanted to use the decimal here, that's okay, but this is certainly equivalent to that. And I notice that my y-intercept of -3 appears right here because that's where the y-intercept is. All right, the next two involve horizontal and vertical lines, which remind me, of course, of Vux-Hoy, V-U-X-H-O-Y. Well, I'm looking at a horizontal line here, so it's the H-O-Y, and the H stands for horizontal, the 0 stands for the slope of 0, and y tells me my equation is going to be y equals, well, that's what the y is, so it's y equals 6. That's it. So the next one is a vertical line, V for vertical, U for undefined slope, and X telling me my equation is X equals 5. The X value right there. So those are pretty brief, and this Vux-Hoy idea will certainly help you keep that straight in your mind. Easy problems are usually also easily switched, and we don't want that to happen. For the next example, I've got a slope and a point. And this one, I'm still going to make a table, but I've got another little step I've got to do. So the slope is 5/4. And you may recall that slope is rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. So when I make my table, I know the first point. I don't know the second point. The first point is -4, -7. I don't know what the other one is. I could use a graph perhaps and graph it out and then just count the slope. Or I can say, look, the y changed 5. So this is going to go up 5. So -7 plus 5, that gives me -2. And the x went up 4. So -4 plus 4 gives me 0. So there is my second point, 0, -2. Again, stat edit, enter this data, -4, 0, and -7, -2. Then stat, calc, number 4, enter. There's my point. Y equals 1.25x minus 2. Now it's probably also worth noting that it said over here the slope was 5/4. That's the same as 1.25, but you might prefer to write it like this, because the 5/4 is the same thing. And then I might notice also this point, in fact, 0, -2, is the y-intercept, which is why it ends with a -2. All right, the next one is kind of like number 5, but it's a bit of an extension. First, I saw that the slope was -3, but my x-intercept of 2 needs to be rewritten like 2, 0. So when I make my table, I've got 2, 0. And if the slope is -3, that's the same thing as -3/1. So that's the change in y over the change in x. If you'll write that, it'll help you here realize that this is the part that goes down by 3, and this is the part that goes up by 1. It's helpful to write delta y over delta x. That delta, this little triangle symbol, is the Greek D. It's the capital Greek D, and it's delta, and it refers to the change. So in chemistry, you might see a delta T for the change in temperature. So 0 minus -3, this is -3, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So I'm going to take these numbers now and plug them into my calculator. Stat, edit. I've got 2 and 3 here. And here I've got 0 and -3. Then I go stat, calc, number 4. Y equals -3x plus 6. Y equals -3x plus 6. All right, got just a couple more here. A slope of 0, and it goes through this point. Now that alerts me. If the slope is 0, that reminds me of Vux Hoy. This is the one with the slope of 0. That's what that O means in Hoy. So this must be a horizontal line, and my equation is y equals -5. That one's brief, if you can remember the Vux Hoy idea. Otherwise, you're making a table just like we did before and plugging it into your calculator, and you'll get the same thing. Finally, number 8, the slope is -1/4, and an x-intercept is -8. That's -8, 0. So my table is -8, 0. My slope was -1/4. Now just decide where you want that negative. I'll throw it up here on top instead of out there in the front. And so that tells me the change in y is -1, but the change in x is a +4. So when I work that out, this is -1, this is -4. I take these numbers and plug them into my table. -8, -4, and 0, -1. So then stat calc number 4 and calculate that out. There's my equation. Y equals -0.25x minus 2, or y equals -1/4 x minus 2. Same idea right there. So there's quite a few examples in there. I think they'll line up with problems you have on your homework. So go back and refer to this as you need to while you work on your own problems.